I want to get stuck in. It's a chance to catch up with Crash. You've heard him, but I haven't had a chance to talk to him for a couple of weeks now. Robert Craddock, great to have you back.
And great to hear you. What a beautiful summation, Gerard, and well done on staying up last night. It was quite something, wasn't it, in Afghanistan? Gerard, isn't it a lovely story? I mean, that what they've come through, earthquakes, wars spanning 30 years, I think I told you Peter Anderson, the former coach of their Queensland, who I knew, used to say, you'd see gunships hovering overhead at training, and one day at training there's 3 rockets disappeared into the sky. Just to have a coffee, you had to sit in a special sealed room. It's difficult over there with the Taliban running the country, so a sense of buoyancy is sweeping the nation. It's wonderful.
They're making the transition, aren't they? They're out of the minnow category last night, and having listened to a bit out of Pakistan today, they actually didn't regard it as an upset that they finally got rolled by Afghanistan. They felt that this had been building for a while.
Absolutely, and they had shamelessly high expectations in this tournament. They have a sense of fear about them that I think is imbued in them by the struggles they've had. I mean, some of their players travel hundreds of kilometres to go to training and just... they've had so many setbacks. And even the celebrations, it's interesting, in the streets of Kabul, there's a couple of little ones about people celebrating, but because of the Taliban rule and the Taliban's complex relationship with cricket, most people celebrate indoors or on social media. So there is that. But I think this World Cup so needed this victory, Gerard, because there's barely been a close game in the whole tournament. And that's a really big stat. It's just incredible that a lot of teams are having troubles getting the rhythm of 50-over cricket because they're not playing it much. So even a couple of days ago, I think the closest winning margin was 5 wickets or 38 runs, and that's a lot, given that there's been a lot of games nearly the halfway point of the tournament.
So do you feel like the players of the world are out of practice with 50 overs, and maybe the length of this tournament is actually a good thing?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, I heard Harry Brook, one of the reasons England are going so bad is they play the 100 and they play T20, and their 50-over tournament's really been marginalised. So I heard Harry Brook say, look, I'm still learning about 50-over cricket. And I was thinking, gosh, this is a World Cup. You know what I mean? Like, he's young, but he's not that young. Like, he's had a bit of experience. Like, he should be really up to speed with this form of the game. But I reckon a lot of the top teams have not as dominant as what they were a few years ago, and are still struggling with it, whereas the bottom teams, such as Afghanistan and cheeky little the Netherlands, just getting their heads around the format quite nicely. And of course, sure, India and New Zealand are steaming away, but there's still a sense of vulnerability about most of the teams.
So, Rowies, I'm loving this tournament, and having a break at its formative stages was perfect. Every night at 7:30, and Rowies having the same experience. Absolutely loving the Cricket World Cup and the format. I watched the first few hours with a WhatsApp group with a few mates commenting as we go, then check bleary-eyed in the morning. Afghanistan has been brilliant to watch. They're not slogging like minnows of the past. They bat with such poise, technique and skill. It's gorgeous to watch. I'm now an unabashed Gurbaz fan. What a jet.
Yeah. Well, batting was supposed to be their short suit, of course, with Rashid Khan leading the way with the bowling. But they've spent, they attack it really professionally, and they've and the thing is now, Gerard, there's so much really quality information available coaching wise on YouTube that they can pick up their techniques really quickly, and I know they have spent a lot of time on them and were determined not to be that brand of minnow for whom you just, as you say, just smash out and trying to snatch at the result. But that's a stunning victory last night. To mow down 270, 280 against an excellent Pakistan bowling attack is as you say, we have to completely re-rate them as a cricket nation. And, they're a fascinating story. Only in January, Australia refused to tour there because of the way women were treated by the Taliban. Now, nothing's changed. Nothing has changed, and yet we were about to play them in a World Cup. So, that is a matter. You can with double standards, isn't it? Really, I mean, we pulled out against playing in January, and people say, "Oh, it's different in the World Cup." Well, is it? How do morals change in a World Cup?
So, what do you expect of Cricket Australia in such a moment? Then, Crash.
Well, I think that we've got to really dig deep and try and help their teams. It's not about the Taliban; it's about the cricket scene. Like a lot of the Afghan women have taken refuge in Australia from their cricket team, and they're really struggling. So, it's a two-tone situation, isn't it? And I was surprised Australia made that. I can understand it in January, making that decision, but then you're left with playing them in the World Cup, and it just seems so duplicitous, doesn't it?
It was Rashid Khan's plea at the time, wasn't it, that he said, if you follow through on that moral stand, the people it hurts is that team and the striving of Afghanistan cricket, even though there is a broader proposition at play. Is his view that the only people that got hurt was the team itself?
Yeah, he did. And it's fascinating to watch because I know several Australians who have coached over there have said they've met with the Taliban, and the Taliban like cricket and they give it what you might call cautious approval, but they never feel safe. There's an unerring sense of tension at practice sessions and when the team's on tour. No one ever celebrates too loudly over there, and so it's they're progressing under this enormous strain. And Rashid was absolutely heartbroken when that tour was cancelled. And they're light, but they're tough. A lot of their players coming over the years have been raised in refugee camps, and cricket has been an escape for them, and they've progressed, and they're just totally self-made men who have no fear. And I love the way they play. They're real have-a-crack cricketers.
Yes.
We couldn't understand life over there. They just get in and do it. And I think when they can host test matches over there more regularly on turning wickets and that, my goodness me, they could be a real force for anybody.
Let's bring John in Blackburn into our conversation. John, welcome to you.
G'day, Gerard. I rang you when Australia cancelled that series against Afghanistan and said that was a weak decision by Cricket Australia, given that the only people that were going to be affected by that were the actual Afghan players. And now we're in the situation, 6 months down the track. The Afghan players are not the beneficiaries of the Taliban regime. The comparison point we had with apartheid in South Africa is totally inappropriate. The white players in South Africa were the beneficiaries of that regime. The Afghan players here are not. No one is except the Taliban. And the only people that are being penalised are the players themselves, and this seems an illogical decision not to play them.
John, yes, thank you for your thoughts. I remember Malcolm Speed was in our studio not long after that story was developing, and he brought a letter from the head of Afghanistan cricket, and he explained why it was the wrong decision. So instinctively at the start, it felt like the right stand to take, and Malcolm explained the complexity of that in a really worthwhile conversation at the time, which still has ripples. So John, thanks for your thoughts. It should be because of, I think, our emotional connection to the individual players we've seen a lot on these shores, Crashes. When Australia and Afghanistan meet in this tournament, it's going to be a great moment.
Oh, look, it really is. And it's such a complex argument that the national flag, the green and black flag, and the national anthem of Afghanistan, which were banned by the Taliban, they've given permission them to use this tournament. So it is such a complex story. And, over the years, Australia has played in Zimbabwe under the tyrannical reign of Robert Mugabe when he was the boss there. There's been any number of issues with Pakistan politics. It's never stopped us playing Pakistan. And I do get John's point. In South Africa, it was a totally different situation when black players were being marginalised and white players were the beneficiaries. So you say, that's not fair, we're not playing them. But when the cricket team is suffering like it is, you know, they're the guys right at the end of the chain, just trying to play the game. And as we said, the things that they go through just to get a team together is extraordinary. So, yeah, it will be an emotional occasion, Gerard, for all those reasons.
Crash, this tournament, you preached patience after 2 games, and you're right on 2 fronts. Australia is finding its groove. Its better players are now performing, and the upsets have served them extremely well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Gerard. And basically for me, this tournament was always about 6 top teams for 4 semi-final positions. I know there's 10 teams in it and they all play 9 games, but of those 6 teams, England are last and Pakistan are really struggling. So Australia is sitting 4th all of a sudden and haven't played that well. Mitchell Starc is just going so-so, below his best. They're struggling to take early wickets in 3 or 4 games. Teams will be making 100 against them early. And also, you know, the batsman, Steve Smith, hasn't hit form at all. So, you know, you don't want to peak too early.
Yep.
And if you said, is there a worry about India? It's only that I can see them storming through the competition unbeaten and then getting to a final, which is suddenly even money. So psychologically, that can be hard to adjust to. India, the roaring favourites, but so white hot that you'd almost fancy your chances of sneaking up behind them if you make the final.
When do you think Australia might take the opportunity to bring Travis Head back? Today was an important day of training for him. They've got the game against the Netherlands on Wednesday night, or the high-end clash against New Zealand on Saturday.
Oh, look, I think they'd love to put him in against the Netherlands, Gerard, and the decision will be made about 5 o'clock this afternoon. He would go into opener ahead of Mitch Marsh, who dropped down to 3, and probably Marnus Labuschagne out of the team. Although I've got to say this, you know, he's not right at the top of his game, Labuschagne, but he's probably batting a bit better than Smith, who has a little bit to prove in the last half of the tournament. So I'd love to see Head in there and getting some match practice before New Zealand, because that is a big game. You win that game and you're in the semi-finals, basically. You know, I think we can assume that, even though the stats will tell us they've still got a bit to prove. But having him back will be good. I think they've missed him, Travis Head. But Mitchell Marsh is still my barometer man. When he gets going, Australia wins.
His hitting the other night was so clean, and his driving is an absolute thing to behold. So what that Australian middle order, they feel to me like their fate is absolutely going to be determined by Warner, Head and Marsh. If there is a day when they're required, are you holding a candle for the middle order?
Yeah, I am, because I've just got so much faith in Smith coming good at some point. To me, he's played so much cricket. I feel he's almost better when his back is absolutely against the wall. And when Australia's playing India in the semi-final and they're, you know, 3 for 50, and you just know he's got a 75 off 75 in him, and maybe that won't be enough. But I just think, you know, the pressure of World Cup semi-finals and finals is just enormous. But having said that, Stoinis' batting has only been average. They sent Maxwell in early the other day, and do you know, Gerard, isn't it funny? Most overrated things in cricket, changing your batting order and sending sloggers in early, because they almost go in. You can almost see, if you look closely, their eyes spinning like poker machine. The lemon spinning around in the poker machines. If say, here I go, I've got to get into this. I've been sent in early. So just keep the batting order as it is. Guys can up the tempo, that's fine. But I thought Pete Lawler made a good point when he said David Warner has somehow regathered his power, and which mysteriously went missing for a couple of years without anyone really noticing. And it's a very good point. He's got his crunch and punch back, and it's he just looks a better player. And I don't quite swallow the argument from the selectors that, this has got nothing to do whether he plays his last 3 tests in Australia, which he wants to get. I think if he'd have failed in this tournament, it would have been a real downer on that prospect. by succeeding, he doesn't necessarily pump his stocks up that much. But if he'd have failed, I think it would have been very, very grim prospects for getting 3 more tests at home.
Is it recency bias, or is there merit to the debate that he's Australia's best ever white ball batter ahead of the likes of Michael Bevan, Dean Jones, Mike Hussey, Andrew Simons, Adam Gilchrist, Matthew Hayden?
Yeah, jeepers, it's... yeah. Oh, look, I think if you say white ball and you can include 2020 in that, I reckon you probably just get him over the line. But 50 over, probably not, in that, I think of... I love the innovators like Dean Jones and Michael Bevan. Ponting was a fabulous white ball player, as was Mark Waugh, Hayden. Look, they're all in the batch between each other. But white ball with Warner in T20 as well, he's very, very close to it. But I tell you where he does stand out is just his ability to change gears and adapt to the red ball when he has to. He once said a few months ago, he said, there will never be another batsman like me in Australia. And it came across like a bit of hubris, but I do get his point.
Yep.
It's show me another one, Gerard. We're flat out getting a test specialist opener. We're flat out getting a decent one-day opener. He was good at all 3 formats and a much smarter cricketer than he was given credit for. I mean, Chris Rogers always said, I never opened with a smarter player. If a bowler was showing any sort of limp on the boundary, he'd say, mate, I'll run 2 to that guy.
Yep.
You just watch, just take off. He's got that, as Usman Khawaja said, book smart, no. Khawaja used to say to Warner, I'm book smart, Dave. You're not book smart. You're street smart.
Yes.
You're much street smarter than I am.
Yeah, that's a lovely line. Hey, Cam from Chirnside Park is not alone in sending through this sentiment. And there's a risk for Australia in laughing at England's predicament at the moment, but they're dead last. England on the bottom of the ladder, enter Piers Morgan, turns ladder upside down. See England the moral victor again. How are they so bad at the moment, Crash?
Yeah. Well, they did desert the format. That they really marginalised 50 over cricket because they had to squeeze in the 100 off 100 balls. And you know what? 50 over cricket is a game of patience. As David Warner keeps saying, it's a long innings. And I reckon all their batsmen lack that sort of third gear. They've got 4th and 5th. Harry Brook can hit a ball from Ahmedabad to Delhi.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you've just got to be patient and hit sort of 50 off 55. And that's the gear they've chosen all these all-rounders. But the trouble with all-rounders, with the ball, they can lack penetration on flat decks. Have a look at all the leading wicket takers in the tournament. And a lot of them are fast bowlers who are top quality, not bits and pieces all-rounder. England take great pride in announcing that they bat down to number 10, where Adil Rashid scored 10 first-class centuries. And that's fine, and it's good, but you've also got to have some real crunch and punch and cut through your pace bowling, and they've struggled. I've got to say, are you stunned by it, Gerard?
Yeah.
I'm staggered.
So early in the tournament, I was running the theory that maybe England and Australia just punched each other out in the Ashes, and that might still be the case. They might still both be punch drunk, and there are so many players who are common to both series that there's a toll from that Ashes which was just so grueling, and yeah, maybe for both. Anyway, we'll see. There's a difference between coaching a club and coaching a country. Coaching a country in any code can't be a vanity project. It can't be a personal indulgence, and you can't create your own fiefdom. The team belongs to the country, and in a way, it's national service. You go in, you create the character. I think in Australia, we ask you to be true to the Australian way of playing, regardless of the sport. It seems to me that Eddie Jones has breached all of these truisms in his return as the Wallabies coach, and for the life of me, I cannot understand how he's still in the job.
Totally fair question, but here's the answer, Gerard. He's in the job because he's got a 5-year deal, and however treacherous it was for him to secretly talk to Japan about coaching them, even though he had 4 years left on his contract, it wasn't actually a breach of contract. So to sack him now, this penniless, rudderless Australian Rugby Union has to find money for a massive payout, and that's the problem. They would love to get rid of him tomorrow. He was hired by the chairman, Hamish McLennan, and as a captain's pick, and the board were sort of a bit mixed on it. Andy Marinos, the chief executive, actually resigned over the hiring of Jones. He's been a disaster, but he's smart. He's negotiated so many contracts over the years, Gerard, that he makes sure there's every detail, and here's the key. They wanted him more than he wanted them. So the contract was his way. So he's sitting back, figuratively in a shaving coat, smoking a cigar, saying, hey, I'm up for the 4 years for sure. Now, if you want to sack me, oh, well, I guess I'll go, so long as you pay that X million dollars. So you're right. I know there's guys on the board that would love to sack him tomorrow, but they can't afford to. So it's a unique situation. How he continues for 4 years, don't ask me. I heard his press conference last week, and Gerard, can I just tell you something? I didn't believe a word of it when he was saying, nah, mate, I'm fully committed. He used the word mate 42 times in the press conference.
He's got a credibility problem with the nation, and I just wonder what that looks like with the team. And so my follow-up question is, do you think Hamish McLennan has asked him face-to-face, man-to-man, whether he interviewed for the Japan job?
Yes, but we don't know the answer to that. Okay. Phil Waugh, the chief executive, said that Eddie has denied it. But Phil Waugh hasn't gone to Japan. But I felt that a few rugby officials were saying over the last 24 hours, hang on, all the officials are still in France for the World Cup, where there's functions. Just walk up to the boss of Japan Rugby and say, can I ask you a question, old mate? Have you interviewed Eddie Jones? And they almost fear the answer being yes. Okay. They know the answer is yes. Tim Horan, who's as straight a guy as I've ever known, the Wallabies centre, he just said, point blank, I've checked it out, and he was interviewed by him. Now, that'll do me. Yeah. I've stopped researching the question. Yeah. Tim is just so solid. So he has been interviewed for the Japan job 2 days before the World Cup starts in France, when he's got 4 years left on his contract.
And it's not a breach of contract.
Well, I got to say secretly, Gerard, as a journo, I love the theatre of it because it's beyond the bizarre. Crazy Eddie, and sort of Indiana Jones. We should call him Indiana Jones because it's that bizarre, the whole thing.
Crash, great to chat on a Tuesday. I'll talk to you next Monday.
See you, Gerard. Thank you.